Hi, it's Timo. Welcome to Norwich City Central.
Well, hello everybody. Lewis, Norwich City Central. I hope you're doing well. Norwich City, after what has been a quite manic week to say the least, have got their man, and it's Dean Smith. In this video, I'll be going through a little bit about Dean Smith and his managerial history and reflecting on what it means for Norwich City. But I'd love to hear your thoughts down below in the comment section. This is a fascinating appointment, someone who wasn't even on the radar a few days ago publicly, but Dean Smith's come in, and yeah, a really interesting one. I think there's been a lot of mixed reception, but I think the more I've read about him, and the more you kind of delve into it, I think it is a really good appointment from Norwich City. And also, we are Norwich, we are bottom of the Premier League with 5 points. I don't think we can be expecting Pep Guardiola or anyone like that. So yeah, honestly, I think it's a good appointment, but I'd love to hear your thoughts down below in the comments section. And of course, any Aston Villa fans who might pop in, let me know your kind of thoughts on him. Because interestingly, Daniel Farke left, of course, on the Saturday. And you know, there's outpouring of emotion. Norwich City fans, of course, were very appreciative of him. And then Dean Smith from Aston Villa was sacked on the Sunday, just 24 hours after. And similarly, Aston Villa fans have got so much respect for Dean Smith and what he's managed to achieve. But of course, Norwich City sacked Farke because they didn't believe he was going to be able to keep them up. And Aston Villa sacked Dean Smith because they believed he wasn't the man to take them forward, you know, going into the top half in the European places. So it's a really interesting one. But let's reflect on Dean Smith. His main managerial kind of success started at Walsall, where he spent several years kind of building Walsall into the club, into a club who ended up challenging for promotion to the Championship. And I think he left Walsall midway through a season when they were in the automatic playoff spots. And then he joined Brentford, and that's really where his success properly started. And you know, he really gained a lot of respect. He was at Brentford for 3 years between 2015 2018, and the Brentford models worked so well. He obviously never got them promoted, he wasn't there, but he really built Brentford up from the bottom and turned them into a really attractive club playing really good pragmatic football, and of course was responsible for developing a lot of youngsters, which Stuart Webber's hugely going to be appreciative of. And I think when you look at it and you look at the appointment, you know, Norwich City needs someone who's going to be able to play youngsters and develop them. And I think Dean Smith is someone who's going to be able to do that. But yeah, did a really good job at Brentford, of course, managing the likes of Mupay, Ollie Watkins, and you know, a whole array of good talent. But the main kind of point of his career is when Aston Villa appointed him as their manager about a third way through the 2018-2019 season, which of course us Norwich City fans know very fondly. And they appointed Dean Smith instead of Steve Bruce, or they sacked Steve Bruce rather. And we know kind of Steve Bruce's style of football. It's very defensive, not particularly playing football in the right way. And Dean Smith came in and turned the whole style around into a much more pragmatic style. Now, in that first season, Dean Smith got Aston Villa promoted in what was a really interesting Championship season. Of course, Norwich City under Daniel Farke were the underdogs when you look at our team and squad, and we managed to win the title. You had Chris Wilder's Sheffield United in there, Bielsa's Leeds, who didn't get promoted in that season, and of course Dean Smith got Aston Villa promoted. But if you look at their team, they did have Tammy Abraham up front. They had Jack Grealish playing, you know, brilliant football. Tyrone Mings. They had quite a few England internationals. So, and if you look at how much, you know, if you look at Aston Villa, they were the biggest of dogs in that league, and it was a real expectation that Aston Villa should get promoted with the squad they've got. But it was a really difficult Championship season, and regardless of the budget and whatnot, you've still got to get promoted, and that's what Dean Smith did, beating Derby 2-1 in the playoff final. Of course, Frank Lampard's Derby as well. So it's funny how everything kind of comes back round in circles. It seems like a very small world. But no, Dean Smith got Aston Villa promoted. They were expected to get promoted, but he still had to do it and did it well. And then he went into that first Premier League season, of course, getting promoted alongside Norwich. I remember Dean Smith came to Carrow Road, didn't he, and beat us 5-1 and played us off the table that day with Jack Grealish having a blinder. Aston Villa spent £100 million in that first season, and they finished 17th. They achieved what they needed to do. They finished 17th, but you know, spending £100 million on the surface of it, you would expect a team to at least stay up. But they did lose Tammy Abraham, of course, who's a proper goal scorer, who's doing amazing things for Chelsea. Frank Lampard's Chelsea funny how it's a really small circle. And they signed, as I said, they spent £100 million, but some of that money wasn't particularly well spent. They spent a couple, 20 and 15 million on a couple of strikers, which didn't really work. So, yes, Dean Smith had a massive budget to play with, but you've got to remember when you look at the likes of Liverpool, for instance, Liverpool sometimes going to transfer windows hardly spending any money, and look at the powerhouse they were. On paper, that Aston Villa team was probably good enough to stay in the Premier League, but they weren't. Just because they spent 100 million, it wasn't mean they were going to challenge for European places. And yeah, I thought Dean Smith did a good job in that first season. But the second season is when Dean Smith did excellently at Aston Villa. They finished in 11th. Again, they spent £100 million. They have a huge budget, don't they, Aston Villa? And in that second season, okay, that their squad was more than good enough to stay up. Martinez came in, Matty Cash, and of course Ollie Watkins up front. They got their striker and he delivered. And Aston Villa played some beautiful football, finishing 11th. Of course, Dean Smith had a big budget to play with, but they did really well. And then this season, they spent, again, 100 million. They did lose Jack Grealish for 100 million, but they had a really, really good squad, and it was looking like a team who were going to challenge for possibly European places, as where West Ham are at the moment. Dean Smith changed to a 3-5-2 formation, and it never worked. And Dean Smith's Aston Villa lost 5 games in a row, and then was sacked. So that's where Dean Smith currently is, and yeah, quite an interesting managerial appointment. Of course, from a Norwich City perspective, we sacked Daniel Farke on the Saturday, and they would have had other appointments. Stuart Webber would have had other appointments, one of them being Frank Lampard, probably another being Kjetil Knutsen, and Stuart Webber would have had different targets. But, of course, football can change really quickly. You see Dean Smith get sacked, and then his kind of targets changed, and Dean Smith seemingly became the number one appointment. So, there was a couple of thoughts that, Stuart Webber's not clueless, that's probably the wrong choice of words, but his kind of main plans are, he's all over the place essentially. But I think when you see Dean Smith come in, someone of his pedigree, your plans can change, and that's totally fine. And yeah, I like Dean Smith. I think if you look at Frank Lampard and Kjetil Knutsen and Dean Smith, those are the 3 names which have been branded about. And if you look at the pros and cons of each, I think firstly with Frank Lampard, he's a modern forward-thinking coach, someone who has managed with top players, someone who's done, a relatively decent job in his short managerial career. He's a big personality. I'm sure he would get a lot out of these Norwich City players. But the cons with him, there's no really clear, defined way of playing football in Frank Lampard's way. He hasn't got much managerial experience, and he's not really been too successful. But he is a bit unpredictable, so that was that kind of exciting factor. With Kjetil Knutsen, pros, like what he's done in Norway is sensational. Changing Bodo from a relegation threatened team to one of Norway's best ever teams, over 100 points, winning the Norwegian League with ease. They're going to probably win it again, and also challenging in Europe as well. They're beating Jose Mourinho's Roma 6-1, which was his heaviest loss. Lots of really, and he plays really attractive football, but also maybe some of the cons. He's never managed in England before, and the most he's ever spent on a player is 300k. So would he be able to deal with some of these bigger names and going straight in the deep end in the Premier League? And then you've got Dean Smith, who's probably a hybrid of the two. Is it an underwhelming appointment? Some may argue it's underwhelming, but I would also argue it's quite an underrated appointment as well. If you look at Dean Smith and those kind of cons with Lampard and Jutson, obviously Dean Smith worked with top players. He knows what it takes to survive in a relegation battle whilst playing attractive and pragmatic football. And yeah, compared to Frank Lampard, there is a clear, defined way of playing, and he has actually got a track record of keeping teams up and being successful. So that's where I look at both of them at the moment. I think Dean Smith is a really, really good appointment. And Aston Villa fans, it's always good to hear what opposition fans think, and Aston Villa fans absolutely love the guy. Of course, he is a boyhood Aston Villa fan, and one of my main concerns as well is obviously being sacked from Aston Villa. He's been managing pretty much non-stop for several years now without a break. And obviously, when you lose your job to a boyhood club, it must hurt. But yeah, Dean Smith looks to be coming back right in. He impressed in his interview, understands the culture, wants to develop young players. And yeah, I think he's someone with Premier League experience who also likes to play pragmatic attacking football, as opposed to a Steve Bruce or a Roy Hodgson, and knows what it takes to take a club up. And if Norwich City do get relegated down into the Championship, he's also got experience taking a club back up. I guess one of the main concerns is that he had Jack Grealish at Aston Villa and had Tammy Abraham and Ollie Watkins and some really good players. So could he do it with a smaller budget? Well, we'll have to wait and see. But let's not forget Norwich City spent £60 million this season. So 100 million doesn't always necessarily mean that you're going to challenge for Europe. And Dean Smith's achieved his objectives, and Aston Villa fans are very thankful for him. So they're kind of my thoughts on it. I think Dean Smith is a really interesting appointment. Maybe at first underwhelming when you think of the unpredictability and excitement of Jethro Knutson and Frank Lampard, but he's got a track record of keeping clubs up. He's got the Premier League experience. He likes developing youngsters. And yeah, it's such an interesting one because he wouldn't have been on Stuart Webber's mind last week, but now he is, and we've got to back him. And yeah, I wish Dean Smith the best of luck. I think it could be a really, really decent appointment. And yeah, he's going to be thrown right in the deep end with 3 massive games against Southampton, Wolves and Newcastle. So yeah, certainly an interesting one. And I'd love to hear your thoughts down below as Dean Smith has been confirmed as Norwich City manager. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.